All right, we are going to get started today with our Chapter 1 video overview lecture. This chapter is all about criminal law and punishment and just kind of the basics, defining what we're going to be working through this semester. So there are two types of core felonies: those against persons. These are crimes that we've all heard of: murder, manslaughter, rape, kidnapping, robbery. The second class are crimes against property. This is arson, burglary, theft, and robbery, depending on how it's defined. All of the rest of criminal law deals with kind of police power and public morals and just kind of regulating society. Next, your book does some comparisons between crimes and torts. You might see some of these types of questions on the exam. Crimes and torts are very similar in ways and different in others. Crimes generally are brought by the state, while private parties can sue. Convicted offenders pay money to the state or serve time in custody, while defendants in a tort case pay a financial damage to the person who sued them. And ultimately, criminal conviction is the condemnation of the whole community. And then the burden of proof is much more severe in a criminal case than in a tort. So we're looking at all elements of a crime proven beyond a reasonable doubt versus preponderance of the evidence. Preponderance of the evidence is considered like 50% plus a feather, while beyond a reasonable doubt, I define as 70-75% likely this person probably committed this crime the way described by the prosecutor here. I know others define it as a higher threshold, as more of a 90-95% threshold, but I have seen prosecutors successfully argue that it's more of a 75% threshold to juries in the past. But just know that it is significantly more rigorous. You have to show more to get a conviction here. We have some classifications for crimes that you definitely need to know. The first is mal in se. This is behavior that we consider to be inherently wrong or evil. These are things like murder, rape, things that are just inherently evil. Mala prohibita are things that are more criminal because we say so, like drunk driving. There's nothing inherently evil about that, but we classify it as a crime. We also have felonies, which are punishable by death or confinement of a year or more, and misdemeanors that are punishable by confinement in a local jail, generally up to 1 year. Okay. There's some kind of is this a felony or misdemeanor questions below that you can work through. First one, someone was sentenced to prison for 15 months. That would be a felony. It's more than a year. The second one, 36-year-old was released from jail for serving a 280-day sentence. That would be a misdemeanor. It's less than 1 year. Okay. So our sources of criminal law. The primary source of criminal law are the state criminal codes. Each state has its own criminal code, and that's where the bulk of criminal law is. Criminal law is not really federal. It is mostly states. So if someone is being prosecuted for a homicide, they're almost always going to be in a state court. Model Penal Code is kind of this attempt to regulate criminal law. We have city ordinances. There is a federal U.S. criminal code. It is not as large as state criminal code. We have some administrative agency crimes, and then some informal discretionary lawmaking. This is when prosecutors or police officers decide not to press charges, not to move forward with something. Okay. This is, again, kind of a criminal offense or municipal ordinances. Municipal ordinances are frequently misdemeanors. They're primarily looking at drugs, public order, disorder, quality of life offenses. Okay. The first one is a curfew offense. That would be a municipal ordinance. Intentionally exits a store pushing a cart containing shoes, groceries, and cleaning supplies, and a TV. that's a criminal offense. Walking down the street with a container of alcohol is a municipal offense. So there we go. Criminal punishment in the United States, incarceration is an extremely popular punishment for anyone who violates the criminal code. The U.S. has 25% of the world's prisoners, despite having only 5% of the world's population. I'm sure by now you've all kind of heard mass incarceration. And this is just kind of demonstrating it. Punishment is intentionally inflicting pain or another unpleasant consequence on a person. This definition doesn't have anything to do with criminal law on its face. This could apply to a parent or child. So criminal punishment meets 4 criteria. It inflicts pain or an unpleasant consequence. The punishment is prescribed in the law that defines the crime. It is administered intentionally by the state or the government. Okay, so those are the 4 criteria that must be met to establish criminal punishment. We have a couple of theories of criminal punishment that many of these that we're going to be that we will hear from time to time again throughout this throughout the rest of this book. Retribution is inflicting physical and psychological pain on someone so they can pay for their crime. This is kind of like the hard treatment. If we punish harshly, that other people won't commit crimes and the person can pay for it. We do know that this doesn't always work. One of the things about deterrence is that severe punishments don't necessarily deter crime, but certain punishments do, not necessarily severity. Punishment is kind of a means to greater good. We want to prevent or reduce future crime. When we look at prevention, this is kind of incapacitation and rehabilitation. Those kind of theories that you probably learned about in 101 and 102 kind of coming into play under this prevention tree. Okay. Some criticisms of retribution, that kind of hard line punishment. It is at times hard to punish people in a concrete way. We generally say that we try to deter vigilantism, we try to deter uncivilized human behavior, and a lot of crimes don't require any kind of evil intent to punish. Under prevention, we have this general deterrence. If we punish someone, we'll make an example. Deterrence can be too harsh, though. We want swift and certain, not necessarily severe. There are a lot of criticisms for deterrence. Behavior is unpredictable. Formula doesn't necessarily work. Incapacitation is putting someone in prison or executing them or surgically altering them so they cannot commit another crime. This criticism is that it shifts crimes from free society to prison, which is problematic because we're not actually stopping crime, we're just kind of moving crime. And incarceration is temporary. Rehabilitation looks at that we can teach people to make better choices if we examine the reasons why they're committing crimes, that therapy can change. Again, people and crimes are complex. We don't always have sound research to support every method of treatment. Sometimes we fund things that are not based on research, so it doesn't always work perfectly. Okay, the last chunk of this first chapter, I think it's easy to think, oh, I don't need to know this, but I would really encourage you to look through that text case method starting on page 28 of this chapter. It really explains how the court process works and what some of these terms and ideas that we're going to see over and over again mean. This book is a text case book, so we will have some definitions, explanations, and then we will have an example in the format of a criminal case that's been decided somewhere in this country. Some really important terminology is trial court. This is going to be the court that actually conducts the trial. This is kind of what we see on TV. What we're going to be reading are appellate court appeals of those initial trial verdicts. A not guilty verdict means that the government didn't prove its case beyond a reasonable doubt. Acquittal is that this person is similar to a not guilty verdict. And then a conviction means that this person was deemed guilty. It means the government proved its criminal case beyond a reasonable doubt. Okay. Parts of a case excerpt are the title, the citation, procedural history, the judge, the facts, and the judgment decision. So every case in this book is going to be set out this way. The title, the case, and citation are going to be the top of your case brief assignment. Procedural history is going to be in with the facts. The judge is going to go up here. You're going to collapse these two into one section, and the judgment or decision will go in the holding and rationale of your case brief assignment. Okay. So we have the court's holding. This is the outcome. And this kind of explains what the court decided, and then they explain why they decided that way, okay? And then, so this first chapter has one case, Bond v. United States in 2014. In this case, the defendant is Carol Ann. She was convicted in the Eastern District Court of Pennsylvania for possessing and using a chemical weapon in mail theft. Carol Ann was a microbiologist in Pennsylvania. Her best friend got pregnant by her husband. This made Carol Ann angry, so she sought some revenge against the pregnant former friend. She stole an arsenic-based chemical from her work, and she ordered a vial of potassium dichromate, a chemical commonly used in printing photographs, from Amazon. Both of these chemicals are toxic to humans. In high enough doses, they are potentially lethal. It is undisputed in this case that Carol Ann did not intend to kill the pregnant girlfriend. She instead wanted the chemicals to come into contact with the girlfriend's skin and cause her an unpleasant rash and make her just kind of miserable. Between November 2006 and June 2007, Carol Ann went to the girlfriend's house at least 24 times and spread the chemicals on the mailbox, the doorknob, the car door. These attempted assaults were almost entirely unsuccessful. The chemicals she used were easy to see, and the girlfriend was able to avoid them all but one time, where she got a small chemical burn on her thumb, which she treated by rinsing with water. The girlfriend did eventually call the police to report these substances, but the police took no action. Finally, the girlfriend found some powder on her on her mailbox. She called the police. They told her to go to the post office, and the post officer put surveillance around her home where they caught video of Carol Ann spreading the chemicals. And so Carol Ann was charged with using a chemical weapon. And so our question is this chemical warfare? Congress passed this statute pursuant to after World War I to express the overwhelming consensus that we should not be using chemical weapons against human beings. And so the issue is it okay to charge Carol Ann with engaging in chemical warfare? Was this what Congress meant when they passed this law? And the Supreme Court determines that no, this is not chemical warfare. Carol Ann should not have been convicted of chemical warfare based on these actions. She never intended to cause any severe lasting harm, and this just is not similar to like a war crime involving the use of toxic chemicals to another human being. So Carol Ann's conviction was reversed. Okay, so this is kind of a great case. It's really interesting. It's a great way to start off the semester. So as you read through this chapter, let me know if you have any questions. I look forward to working with you all.